Let's fill out a 2024 US Senate map based on Decision Desk HQ and The Hill's latest averages in the most competitive races. Similar to our ongoing series where we fill out an electoral college map for the 2024 presidential race, we'll also update this Senate map on a periodic basis as the latest numbers come in. As always, you can check out these polling averages for yourself over at elections2024.thehill.com. You're also able to make your own predictions here for the presidency, Senate, and the House. For more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to our channel down below. I hope you enjoy this one. Alrighty, without further ado, let's take a look at the state of play on the 2024 US Senate map. Republicans have a clear fundamental advantage. Out of the 34 Senate seats up for grabs this year, 23 are currently held by Democrats, while just 11 belong to Republicans. The Democratic Party is also tasked with defending 8 out of the 10 most competitive races, 5 of which were decided by less than 3 percentage points in the 2020 election, and 2 more were won by Donald Trump in both 2016 and 2020. Ask any election analyst and they will tell you the same thing. Republicans are heavily favored to win back the Senate this November, no matter if they lose the presidential race or even lose control of the House. Now, as of recording this video, we have just 6 key Senate races where there is enough polling data available to have generated an average. These are temporarily filled in as toss-ups. The rest of the states are already filled in based on the results of the 2020 presidential election, giving the Republican Party a 49 to 45 seat advantage at this point. Again, this is assuming that they hold all of the seats in states that Trump won in 2020, including a potential flip in West Virginia, where incumbent Democrat Joe Manchin is retiring, giving sitting Governor Jim Justice, the frontrunner for the Republican nomination, one of the easiest opportunities for a flip in modern electoral history. On the Democratic side, the only 2 races already marked into their column that are really considered to be truly competitive this year are Nevada and Wisconsin, which both feature Democratic incumbents running for re-election in states that Joe Biden won by narrow margins in 2020. We will try to get polling averages up in these states as quickly as possible. I should also make note of the fact that incumbent Senators Bernie Sanders and Angus King up here in Vermont and Maine are technically speaking independents who just caucus with the Democratic Party in the Senate. And that's why these states are colored in purple and are denoted as 2 additional Democratic seats right here. Okay, let's get started now with the latest polling average in Montana. At the presidential level, the Treasure State has not voted for a Democrat since Bill Clinton in 1996, with Republicans securing the last 3 presidential races here by double digits, most recently a 15-point Trump win in 2020. That said, 3-term incumbent Democratic Senator Jon Tester is running to serve a 4th, and he consistently polls among the most popular senators in the country. He's expected to face Tim Sheehy, a retired Navy SEAL and former aerospace CEO, who has received the endorsement of Donald Trump in the Republican primary, as well as 4 of Montana's most prominent Republican politicians: Governor Greg Gianforte, Senator Steve Daines, and Congressman Ryan Zinke and Matt Rosendale. When trying to forecast the outcome of a down-ballot contest in a state like Montana, it's important to keep in mind that the 2024 Senate elections will occur simultaneously as the presidential election. And as a result, it is highly likely that split-ticket voting in this November's elections will further decline from already record lows. What I mean by that is that fewer and fewer voters are backing members of different parties for different offices. And because of this, a historically low number of Senate candidates are elected in states won by the opposing party's presidential candidate. In fact, there are currently just 3 Democrats in the Senate right now, representing states that Trump won in the 2020 election. That's a 10-member drop since 2008, and there are just 2 Republican senators representing Biden-won states, one of those being Susan Collins of Maine, which is actually the only state to vote for presidential and Senate candidates of opposite parties in the same general election since 2012. In the 2012 election alone, 6 states split their presidential and Senate votes. So saying all of that, you can begin to understand why Montana is considered a prime pickup opportunity for the Republican Party. Tester will likely need to outrun Biden by around 15 to 20 percentage points to be reelected, which is a tall task in today's environment. As of our latest polling average, the incumbent Democrat leads Sheehy by just 0.2%, based on 6 polls. Tester is polling at an average of 46.1% to the Republican, Sheehy's 45.9%. This is significantly closer than it was a month ago, when Tester led by almost 6 points. And this is due to the most recent survey conducted by JL Partners showing Sheehy with a 3-point advantage. Now, part of Tester's advantage in these earlier polls may be explained by Sheehy's lower name recognition, which will become less of a factor over time as Sheehy is going to receive a lot of money from the Republican National Committee specifically over the next 6 months to make himself known across the state of Montana. Nevertheless, going back to the map, Montana will remain a toss-up state on this map with its 0.2% margin. For the rating classifications in these videos, toss-up states will describe those with margins below 2% in either direction, lean states between 2 to 6%, and likely states between 6 to 10%. Down in Arizona now, this was shaping up to become one of the most interesting U.S. Senate races in recent memory. That was until incumbent Senator Kyrsten Sinema announced in March that she would not seek a second term. Sinema was elected in 2018 as a Democrat and then left the Democratic Party in 2022 to become an independent, though she still caucuses with Democrats in the Senate. She had initially filed to run for re-election as an independent, setting up what would have been a 3-way contest between her, Democratic Congressman Ruben Gallego, and 2022 Republican gubernatorial nominee Kari Lake. Now it appears that Gallego and Lake will face off head-to-head, as both candidates lead their primary competition by a wide margin and have racked up endorsements from prominent members of their respective parties. As of recording this video, Gallego holds a 4.7-point advantage based on 19 polls included in our average. Though, as you can see here, both candidates are currently polling below 40%, Gallego at 39% and Lake at 34.3%. So there are clearly a lot of undecideds and/or former Sinema supporters who have yet to throw their firm support behind either the Democrat or Republican. It is worth noting, though, that Democrats have won the last 4 federal elections for president and U.S. Senate in Arizona, as well as the most recent contest for governor. This comes after Republicans had dominated statewide elections here for almost 70 years, winning 16 out of 17 presidential races between 1952 to 2016. Over in Texas, generally considered to be less competitive than these other 5 races, incumbent Republican Senator Ted Cruz is seeking a 3rd term in office, and will certainly be hoping to avoid a repeat of the scare that he encountered in 2018 when he came less than 3 points from being unseated by popular Democrat Beto O'Rourke. Cruz will face Democratic Congressman Colin Allred this time around after Allred secured his party's nomination on Super Tuesday. Should Allred pull off the upset, it would be the first time the Democrats won a U.S. Senate contest in Texas since 1988. Most analysts, though, believe that this race leans heavily in favor of Cruz this time around, though our polling average has displayed an intriguingly close race up to this point. Cruz leads by just 3.7% based on 10 polls. He is drawing in an average of 47.4% across those surveys, compared to Allred's 43.7%. Cruz is led by at least 5 points in 7 out of the 10 polls, dating back to last May, with 3 others showing a tied race or Cruz in front by just 8 points. It is worth noting here, though, that the overall margin of lead for Cruz, 3.7%, is a full 5 points lower than Donald Trump's margin of lead over Joe Biden in our presidential average in Texas. Nevertheless, going back to the Senate map, this race goes down as leaning Republican right now. Now, as for the 3 states in the Great Lakes, Upper Rust Belt region, we have 3 traditional presidential battlegrounds. For over a century in American politics, Ohio reigned supreme as the ultimate bellwether state. The party that won Ohio won the White House in all but 3 election cycles since 1896. But today, Ohio is no longer considered a true battleground, and really isn't even thought of as remotely competitive at the presidential level either, after Trump carried it by 8 points in both 2016 and 2020. That makes this Democratic-held seat another prime pickup opportunity for the GOP. Just like over in Montana, incumbent Senator Sherrod Brown's odds of re-election in Ohio are entirely dependent on just how far ahead he can run of Biden, as the president is expected to lose the state by a margin of around 8 to 10 points again this November. Brown, like Tester in Montana, has thrived on his ability to win cross-party support, and so the central question is whether Republican-leaning voters in Ohio, who like Brown personally, will once again cast a vote in his favor, or will they vote for their preferred national party, with Trump headlining the top of the ticket. Bernie Moreno, a car dealership owner, claimed victory in last month's closely contested Republican primary, thanks in large part to former President Trump's endorsement, as Moreno beat out state Senator Matt Dolan and Ohio's Secretary of State Frank LaRose. Moreno is generally considered by most analysts as the GOP's weakest general election candidate, and he has trailed Brown in every head-to-head poll surveyed thus far. He currently trails by an average of 6.7% based on a 13-poll average from DDHQ and The Hill. Brown has even led by double digits over Moreno on 4 occasions. That being said, I should note that 2022 Democratic Senate nominee Tim Ryan also led Republican nominee J.D. Vance at many points throughout the 2022 cycle, before ultimately losing by 6 points, and Ryan was thought of as the Democratic Party's ideal candidate in that race. At the presidential level, Trump has also greatly outperformed his own polling averages in Ohio's last 2 presidential contests, beating Real Clear Politics' 2016 Election Day average by 6 points, and then by 7 points in 2020. Since we are filling in this map, though, based on the latest polling averages alone, we'll go ahead and place Ohio's Senate race down as leaning toward the incumbent and the Democratic Party. Up in Michigan, 4-term incumbent Democrat Debbie Stabenow is retiring, leaving Democrats vulnerable in this key presidential battleground where Biden has polled poorly relative to expectations so far this cycle. This will be the first open race for this seat since 1994, which was also the only time since 1972 that Republicans won a Michigan U.S. Senate race. Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin is the heavy favorite to secure the Democratic nomination based on polling, endorsements, and fundraising thus far, while former Congressman Mike Rogers stormed into the forefront of a 13-person Republican primary field with the endorsement of Donald Trump. 8 polls have been conducted so far assessing the head-to-head contest between Slotkin and Rogers, and Slotkin has led in all but 1, with the lone exception showing the 2 candidates tied at 37% each. The overall average has Slotkin leading by 3.5 points, with 41.2% to her name to Rogers' 37.7%. This again translates over to another lean Democrat margin on the Senate map. Finally, that leaves us with Pennsylvania, where incumbent Democrat Senator Bob Casey is an electoral powerhouse, having won 6 consecutive statewide elections here in the Keystone State, dating back to 1996 when he was first elected state auditor. Casey won his first election to the U.S. Senate in 2006, defeating then-incumbent Republican Senator Rick Santorum by 18%, the largest ever margin for a Democratic Senate nominee in Pennsylvania's history. Casey was then re-elected by 9% in 2012, and again in 2018 by 13%. That 2012 election, which happens to be the last time that he ran during a presidential election year, stands as the only statewide election that Casey has not won by a double-digit margin. With all of that in mind, Casey is expected to run several points ahead of Biden this November, which obviously bodes well for his chances given that Pennsylvania is expected to be decided by a very narrow margin once again this November. Biden leads Trump by 0.2% right now based on 39 polls in our presidential average in Pennsylvania. As for the Senate race, Casey currently leads Republican favorite David McCormick by 8.7% based on 15 polls. McCormick lost the 2022 Senate primary to Trump-endorsed Dr. Oz by less than 1,000 votes out of more than 1 million cast. The celebrity doctor then went on to lose to Democratic nominee John Fetterman in the general election by a margin of nearly 5 percentage points. It was a massive underperformance for Republicans, given that Oz held a narrow lead in polling averages headed into election night. It also marked the first time that Democrats would hold both of Pennsylvania's Senate seats since 1947. Now, Casey has led McCormick in all 17 polls dating back to last March, ranging from as low as 1 point all the way up to 17%. His overall average lead of almost 9 points, though, makes Pennsylvania go down as likely Democrat on this Senate map, which does mean that the balance of power in the U.S. Senate, based on the latest polling averages, is effectively undecided. With Montana marked down as a toss-up, Republicans are currently projected to win 50 seats to Democrats' 49. This would only be enough for the GOP to secure a majority in the Senate should Donald Trump defeat Joe Biden in the presidential election, and thereby hold the tie-breaking VP vote. However, if Biden is re-elected, Republicans would still likely need to flip Montana to secure their majority. That's all, though, for this edition of the 2024 U.S. Senate map based on Decision Desk HQ and the Hill's polling averages. As always, feel free to let us know in the comments what you thought of this video, and let us know if there are any other scenarios or maps you'd like us to explore in future videos. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to click that like button down below if you did indeed like it, and subscribe to the channel while you're at it if you haven't already. Also, check out more content from our channel here, and we'll catch you next time.